To TGI Sports Talk with your host, Keith Angle, on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Oh. Good morning, everybody. Keith Angle with TGI Sports Talk. It's Friday, January 15th, I believe. The dates are starting to kind of jumble all together after all this time working from home and whatnot, but it's your typical winter day here in the Northeast. We haven't had much snow since our big snowstorm, but we've had dreary weather here in East Greenbush, New York. We're still the only live streaming webcast here in East Greenbush, New York, which we hang our hat on. I want to thank last week's guest, Hal McCoy. Hal covered the Cincinnati Reds for 50, or still covering the Reds for 50 years now, going all the way back to the Big Red Machine. We had a few technical difficulties getting Hal in the broadcast studio, but we did get him on the phone. So we had some great reception to that. I thank all of you, and I'll thank all the groups that I'll share this interview with as well. And make sure you join us Sunday for our Stream of Consciousness show, as it were, live at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll cover all the topics in sports today. But today, my guest is Eric Soderholm. Eric was a very solid Major League Baseball player for probably 10 years, from the early 70s to 1980. Played with the Twins, the White Sox, short time with the Rangers, and with my Yankees in 1980. Has suffered some injuries in his career, but had some very solid seasons. He also has started something called Solder World today, in his second life, as it were, which is a healing center, which we'll talk a little bit about with him as well, and we'll help him promote that a little bit on the show and on the page as we go forward. And with that, we'll bring Eric in the room and say good morning. Good morning, Eric Soderholm. How are you?
Good morning. Got to wake up here. I had to put a hat on because I usually don't get up this early, but glad to do it for you.
I always appreciate the guys who are, in an earlier time zone than myself, who will get themselves together as best they can. You look fine, believe me.
I still got a head of hair, but it's looking pretty moppy this morning, so I put the hat on.
I'll be honest with you. As I've, we became Facebook friends, and I kind of follow you a little bit. I'm impressed at the way you've got yourself put together. At, I think 72 or 73 years old now. God bless you. And the head of hair really is, as you can see, I'm very envious of.
I gotta thank my mom for that. I think I heard you in that department.
One of my passions in doing this show has been being able to bring on some guys that I grew up with. I'm a bit younger. I'm not young anymore, but I feel like I'm a young 60 years old. So the Eric Soderholms were important to me growing up because I was a huge baseball fan, a huge Yankee fan, but a big baseball fan. And you were one of the guys, believe it or not. This isn't just because I have you here in front of me. Eric Soderholm was a guy that I enjoyed following a little bit in the 70s, and with that 1 year with the Yankees in the 80s. And it's funny that it popped into my head, Eric, that it kind of happened when you and I were just talking a second ago about technology. And with all the tools that are at our hands today, when I was 13 or 14 years old, I knew every player on every team and the starting lineup and starting rotations of every team. And I don't know that today. And I have more tools at my fingertips. And I think it comes from, and this is just me, I don't know why it popped in my head. I was an avid reader of the Baseball Digest and the Sporting News, and because we didn't have 24/7 access to everything then. I had 2 channels on my TV and those publications, and I wonder if it's just because of that you had a more concentrated focus on the world of baseball. I knew Eric Soderholm, I know a lot of guys who in upstate New York really knew who Eric Soderholm was then. They're going to know after today. Yeah. Any thoughts on that yourself?
I was born in Cortland, New York, so
were you?
A little bit familiar. Yeah, cool. Cortland, New York.
That's only a few hours.
They actually had Yeah, they had a day when I had that big year in '77 when I won the Comeback Player of the Year award. They had a Eric Soderholm day in Cortland, New York, and it was unfortunately I had caught some really bad flu bug or something 2 days before I had to go there, and I was like almost in the hospital. So I had to send a representative, and I regret that day. I really was appreciative that they would give me a day in Cortland, New York, but I couldn't make it because I was in the hospital. But um, yeah, I have some fond memories of New York, and it's an area that I moved down from. I was born in Miami, Florida, and I have
Oh, I muted my mic
there's
as
a place in my
well.
heart for New York. Oh, okay. Right.
Hopefully you can hear me
Yeah,
now.
this high
Sorry about
tech
that.
world. It's yeah, I'm kind
I
of
probably
glad
have
I'm
been mic
old
mute.
now and don't have to do stuff anymore.
Yeah. In case my mic was muted earlier, my guest today is Eric Soderholm, former Major League Baseball player with the Twins and the White Sox and the Yankees in the '70s and early '80s. Eric, you were drafted well fairly high by the Twins, and I guess what year were
Yeah, I
you
don't think
actually
you can get
drafted?
much higher. I don't think
No,
you
not
can
higher than number
get
one,
much
right?
higher than
So
number one draft.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. 1968. I can tell you a cute story. I was in college and living on $5 a week at South Georgia Junior College, a baseball school there. And I got a phone call that from Sid Hartman, who's just passed recently of the Minnesota paper, and he said, "Do you know you're the number one draft choice of the Minnesota Twins?" I said, "What?" I had no idea. Came to sign me, and when you're living on $5 a week, he says, "Hey, we're going to offer you $23,500 and the rest of your college education." I said, "Where's the pen? You know, don't before you change your mind, let me sign that." Because
Yeah.
I felt like I was a multi-millionaire, working operating on $5 a week in college. And I get to spring training, and I find out that Steve Bry, who was the number 2 draft choice, got 42,000. So back in those days, you had no scouts, or I mean, you had scouts, but no agents or anything like
Yeah,
that
you're on your
to
own.
represent me back in the late '60s. So
Well,
that was my rude awakening to the business world, if you will.
well, you
But
actually
it
made
was great. I was blessed.
Yeah, you actually made, for those days, I think, a pretty quick ascent to the majors. You were playing with the Twins by 1971 and their starter by '74. And there were some great players on those Twin teams. The teams kind of were middling teams, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what might have held them back because from my memories, and even looking back a little now, there was a lot of talent on those teams, but always finishing around 500, third place in the division. You had Harmon Killebrew at the end of his career, I guess, but still a viable player when you started. Blyleven, Carew. What was it like joining that team and those big names?
Well, I was an honor to play with guys like Harmon Killebrew, Rod Carew, Bobby Allison. I mean, I can go on and on. I mean, great team. Unfortunately, we were in the era where the Oakland A's,
Yeah,
as you know, Sal Bando, Catfish Hunter, and all those guys, Raleigh Fingers, Joe Rudy. They just had a dominant team just at that time. It seemed like we just always finished a little over 500 and always finished second to Oakland. But it was an honor to play with, especially with Rod Carew. I mean, he won 7 American League batting championship titles.
great
So
player.
to be able to watch him play, it was something else. He was one of the best players I ever saw. I mean, I remember one night it was like I think I'm pretty sure he went 5 for 5, and I don't think a ball left the infield. He was a great bunter. He drag bunted twice. He hit a couple of little choppers up the middle that he was fast and beat him out. That same night, I went 0 for 4 and hit 4 line drives, and I'm 0 for 4, and I'm sitting in the sauna after the game, and he walks in, and I said, Rod, I mean, baseball ain't fair. It's just not fair, man. I hit 4 balls hard. You hit duck snorts everywhere, and you got like 5 hits. And as we were talking, he said, "Well, Eric, you want to know the difference between me and you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to know." He said, "Can you look me in the eye and tell me that you believe you're a 300 hitter in the big leagues?" And I was like taken back by that, and I said, "No, I don't think so, Rod. I'm like a rookie, you know." And he said, "Well, my friend, that's why the base hits fall in for me and they don't for you. I don't believe I'm a 300 hitter." He said, "I know I'm a 300 hitter." And those were very powerful words for me, that there was a level of these elite athletes that was beyond belief. It was the kind of, they got into that frequency of knowing
Yeah.
that you're really that good. And he
Yeah.
was a very confident hitter. He could have been a power hitter if he wanted to be, but he was so successful at hitting those opposite field singles and doubles. It was a
What?
pleasure watching him. I love him. He was a character. He was a practical joker. He'd leave you with hot feet. You know how you put the match he'd sneak behind you, put the match in your shoe and light it. The next thing you know, your cleats are on fire. You know that. I mean, that's just the way Bert was. He's just a practical joker. I remember one winter, my wife wanted to make Thanksgiving dinner for everybody. So he had Bert and his wife Patty at the time over, and Danny Thompson and Steve Bry and their wives over. So my wife spends like 3 days preparing this beautiful meal. I mean, just was fantastic. And so her being a little Southern Baptist girl, she made the mistake of saying, "All right, we need somebody to say the prayer. But who would like to bless the food?" So she's holding out hands. We're all holding hands around the table, and Bert says, "I'll bless the food." And Jenny says, "Okay." He turns around and farts on the turkey. Honest to God, he farts on the turkey. My wife just lost it, man. He ended up apologizing, sent her a dozen roses the next day. But I'm telling you, that is just Bert, So he was another great guy I got to play with. I mean, I've been so blessed to play with a lot of great players in my career. And I even on the Yankees when I came to the Yankees in '88. Got to play with some great guys, Lou Piniella, Reggie Jackson. I got a great Reggie Jackson story if you want to hear it. He's got 399 home runs, and Yankee Stadium is packed in anticipation of his 400th home run. And he's hitting 4th in the lineup, and I'm hitting 5th. And he bangs out a line drive into right center field for his 400th home run, and rounds the bases. Now I'm the first guy to greet him at home plate. You just don't high five, "Hey, nice hit." I mean, 400 home runs. So I embrace him at home plate. I grab him and we're jumping up and down like this at home plate. And the next day in the paper, somebody from, I think, New York Post or something back then took a picture, and his face is here and mine is here. And the caption is, "Reggie hits 400th home run." And at the bottom it says, "And receives kiss at home plate from Eric Soderholm." It looked like I was sticking my tongue right in his mouth. So that was a very memorable moment with Reggie Jackson. I really got hot at the guy that took the picture and the caption, and he calls me over to the side and he said, "Listen, Eric," he said, "on the Yankees, it's not whether it's good publicity or bad publicity. Just make sure they spell your name right, man."
Good point.
So
The only bad publicity is no publicity.
When I was with the Yankees, it was like a battle of egos, man. It was just amazing how everybody was fighting for the headlines in New York. It was it was fun. To say that you played on the New York Yankees is a proud moment in my career for sure.
Well, it's funny, and I'll jump ahead a little bit, and then we'll go back since we're on the Yankees. It was your final year, but I mean, you guys had a great team that year. Won 103 games, and unfortunately get to the playoffs and go into one of the few slumps the team had all year, and losing 3 straight. And
George Brett got really, really hot in it.
Yeah,
any team can win on any given Sunday or series. And George Brett just lit us up, man. I think he hit 2 or 3 home runs in that short series, and And Kansas City went on to beat us, and we were. I don't want to say we were almost 2-1 favorites to win that series because we did have the best team. I mean, we really had a lot of talent on that ball club that year. Ron
And
Guidry.
Dick Howser gets fired after winning 103 games, which I think is one of the biggest travesties as a Yankee fan I can remember, amongst a lot of travesties in the Steinbrenner era.
Well,
Yeah, what was
George
Dick
had
like?
there was a phone in the dugout, a red phone that would ring, and Dick would pick it up, and it would be George Steinbrenner from his suite, a direct line into the dugout, and he'd be screaming at Hauser, "Why didn't you hit and run right there? Or why didn't you bunt there, or something?" Finally, Hauser got so upset with him, bugging the shit out of him every day on how he should manage it. He said, "I remember him saying, George, you pay me to manage. Let me manage."
Yeah,
But George just had to micromanage from his suite.
probably the
Steinbrenner.
best thing ever to happen to Dick Howser was to get fired by George, actually. But
I love
what?
Dick Hauser. He was, I think, my favorite manager. Reason he was my favorite manager was that he took time out in every spring training to have a personal, private meeting in his office and just sit you down and talk to you about how he felt he was going to use you throughout the year. Now, I played third base, but you got Craig Nettles ahead of you. So, I mean, I'm not going to get much action at third with Craig there. And
Right.
he said, "Look, you're my go-to guy when they bring in a left-handed pitcher late in the game. I'm going to use you as a DH especially against left-handed pitching, and so don't worry about playing third base too much." Well, I kind of threw my glove in my locker. I hardly used it, because I didn't really. I just took a few ground balls, but I really wasn't in shape to play third base. And Craig Nettles on August 8th, I think, comes down with hepatitis or something. I forget what he had.
Hepatitis, yeah, I
And
remember.
all of a sudden, yeah, Dick says, "Hey, Eric, I'm sorry, I've got to put you in at third base." And I go, "Oh my God, Dick, I haven't played third base in 4 months." I mean, and so I made an attempt. I went out there and felt like a fish out of water because it had been a while before I had played that third base. And sure enough, we were playing in a big series against Baltimore, who they were chasing us. I think they were 3 or 4 games behind us at the time. And we were in Baltimore, and I made 2 errors and at third base. And I remember George Steinbrenner just going ballistic, and uh, and he had a valid point. I mean, I slacked a little bit. I didn't really work hard at staying ready for playing third base, and so he went out a couple days later and got Aurelio Rodriguez from Detroit to play third base, if you remember. So I went
Yeah,
back to my role as a DH against left-handed pitching and stuff. But that was partly my fault. I deserved that probably because I didn't stay ready, and that's a good lesson for everybody to in life to always stay ready. You never know when an opportunity is going to present itself in your life.
excellent point. And as far as your ability at third base, as I remember, I mean, you were above average or a very good third baseman defensively through most of your career, correct?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I had a pretty good defensive fielding record. The problem
Yeah,
is when you don't practice anything. If you're good at
yeah,
something and you don't practice it, you can't just assume that you're going to stay good at something by not working at it. And I slacked that year for sure because I got very comfortable in just DHing against left-handed pitchers and
yeah.
so I got into a little lazy mode there. But yeah, it was a great team. That '80 team was a great team, and I I tell you a cute story too. Um, my career ended the next year on a crazy little thing. I knew that we had done well, obviously with 103 wins, and we were favored to go to the World Series that year. And I just felt like we were going to the next year for sure. So I didn't. I had that attitude of, look, I've got to get ready. I've got to be ready, and work out. So I worked out all winter. I hit at Illinois Benedictine College indoors, and so worked really hard. I was in great, great. 2 weeks before spring training, hey, can you come down to the Chicago Stadium? We got a charity soccer game. We got some athletes coming down, charity soccer game, kick the ball around a little bit and sign some autographs. And, I think, all right, that's fine, no problem. So I get down there. I was running a little bit late, and they had picking up teams, and I saw that Jimmy Pearsall, who I had a feud with going on with the White Sox about how slow I was running with my bad knees, and so we had this little feud going on.
You're not alone in that
And
feud with
Jimmy
him, I think.
Pearsall was he was the goaltender in this charity soccer game. And here's a guy who was ripping me on the air about being slow and stuff. So when I saw that he was the goaltender and I was on the opposite team, I'm going, God, I hope that I get the ball kicked to me so I can kick the soccer ball and just as hard as I can at this guy, just to kind of get revenge a little bit. Sure enough, that's how the universe provides, man. Here comes the ball right in front, and I run up to go kick that ball. And I looked up at his face as he's goaltending. He's like, like that. And I took my eye off the ball as I was going to kick it, looking at his face, because I wanted to drill him in the face. I really did. And I hit the top half of the ball, and the leg slid off and came down funky and ended up tearing my anterior cruciate ligament.
Oh, jeez.
And it's what ended my baseball career.
Was it the
Trying
same
to get
injury that you
revenge
had
against Jimmy
before, or
Pearsall
was it
in
different?
soccer.
Was it the same knee, the same injury you
Yeah,
had
this is
in
my other.
76?
Yeah, I had trouble with my knees most of my career, and
Yeah.
it was my left knee was the best. And I was able to come back from that and won the Comeback Player of the Year award in 1977. But in '80, that incident, I tore my right anterior cruciate ligament, and so tried to make another comeback, but the legs just were too wobbly, and I couldn't. So getting revenge against Jimmy Pearsall is what ended my baseball. One of those.
Well,
I saw a quote from a book I was reading about the Buddhists have a interesting saying: if you're going to hang on to the energy of revenge, you might as well build two graves, one for them and one for you. I actually
yeah.
lived that, hanging on to the energy of revenge. So good lesson. Good lesson for those listening that revenge is not a good energy to hang on to.
Yeah,
Thought
good.
process.
An excellent message for my audience and the world in general today. I think it's there's too much of
Oh,
that. Hang on to the positive energy, right?
absolutely,
Let's
man. Life's too
let's
short to not
circle.
enjoy the journey.
Yeah, let's circle back in your journey. I mean, we jumped ahead a little to the Yankees. I mean, you start with the Twins, as we said. You were a starter from 74 to 75. You had a couple of really good years in 74, 75, productive years. And then you first injured your knee, missed all of 1976. Um,
That was it was crazy how that happened too, Keith. It was I had we were thinking my wife and I were thinking about buying a house in Minnesota, and that's the land of 1,000 lakes. So we found this beautiful piece of property on a lake, and we couldn't afford to buy the house yet because back then, as you know, the salaries weren't too good. I mean,
sure.
my first year in the big leagues was I made 14 grand. And the second year I made 14 grand. And then I worked my way up to about 25 grand after about 5 years. So I didn't have a lot of money, but we had enough money to possibly buy land there, put a down payment down on some land, and maybe in the future build a house there. I was showing some friends of mine the property, and we drove out there in the car, and the car got stuck in the sand. And I said, well, let me find a wood or a piece of board or something that I can put under the tire for traction. And lo and behold, about 15, 20 yards away was this board that was laying there on the ground with no markings or no nothing. And I said, oh, this is good. I'll just pick this. So I picked this up and I turn and go like this. And I go right down with that step into an open storm sewer that led out to the lake. They had it covered with this board with no markings and stuff. And nowadays, that I would have had a great lawsuit going, but I didn't even think about it back then. I fall into
Yeah.
the storm sewer and I crack 4 ribs here. I can barely breathe. They drag me out, And come to find out, I tore a meniscus in my left knee in the fall too. And so they dragged me out and they called the ambulance and uh, got me to the hospital. And it was that was at the end of the season in 75, I think. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
missed the whole season in 76 because not only did the ribs take a while to heal, but I had hurt my knee. And so I had that operated on. And back in those days, they open you up, even for a meniscus. There wasn't nowadays. It's just a scope, an arthritic scope.
sure.
So they opened up my knee and tried to remove the torn part of the cartilage and leave the rest of it in, but it wasn't strong enough the next year to handle all the pounding on the knee and stuff, and so it retore again in spring training, and then it was like operation again, and then I went down to Nautilus weight training facility in Florida, and they offered to rehab my knee if they could use the whole thing as a promotion for Nautilus, who was just coming on the scene. I said, well, sure, if
Yeah,
you can train me and get me back to where I can play again, you use whatever you want. So it ended up working out good for both of us because myself and Dick Buckus helped put Nautilus on the map way back when they were first getting started, and they trained me so hard. I mean, I trained every day, and I got in the best shape of my life. And came back, and Bill Beck signed me as a free agent. And I was kind of, even though Minnesota, I love Minnesota. Calvin Griffith, the owner of the team, was very tight with the dollar, and
yeah.
after 5 years in the big leagues and still making 25 grand, Bill Beck offered 55,000 in the free agency pool, and I said, "Wow, I didn't even play, and I doubled my salary." So I ended up leaving the Twins, and there was a lot of good Swedes up there with a last name like Soderholm. I changed it to Soderholm, but the last name like Soderholm back then, I was well liked up there, and I would have liked to stay, but unfortunately, Mr. Griffith was just very, very tight with his money, and so I came to the White Sox, and the rest is history. Met
Well, it
Bill
was a very
Beck, and he
fortuitous
said, "Look,
move
we're
for
glad
you.
to sign you if you have a." Oh, it turned out great. He just told me at the beginning that, look, we're glad to sign you if you. We need a solid utility type player that can play several positions, this and that. And I told him, Mr. Beck, I worked so hard this year coming back. I'm not going to be a utility player for you. I'm going to be a year everyday third baseman and have a big year for you. And I remember him telling me, kid, if you do that, you come see me at the end of the year and I'll take good care of you. Well, I went out, hit 280, 25 homers. That's 12 more than I had ever hit before. And it wasn't on
Yep.
steroids just because I had worked so hard and was so focused. And there was a note in my locker at the end of the year, come see me, Bill Beck. And I went up there, and he had a 2-year contract for me for $300,000, which I almost, my jaw dropped, because back then it was like that was that was good money, you know. So he said, I remember what I told you. I remember what I told you when we signed in. You went out and did it, and I want to live up to my end of the deal. And that was that really got me to appreciate Bill Beck. I mean, he was a man of his word, and he remembered what he had told me. So
That's
he's like
awesome.
my second dad. Second dad.
Oh, that's awesome. And Eric, that '77 team was, it kind of brought back the life of the Chicago White Sox a bit. They've been struggling for years, low attendance, a lot of issues, and that '77 team generated a lot of excitement. You guys were in first place, I think, well, into the dog days
All
of
the way
summer.
to almost to the end of August.
Yeah,
We were
and some
we
great
had a
players.
5 game lead. Yeah, we're losing. Okay. Yeah, we had a 5 game lead, and then a big Kansas City series where they came in, uh, and I don't know if you'd even remember it or not, but it was we were the team that started. You know, you hit a home run, and then the crowd would just keep applauding until you
Yeah,
came out and tipped your hat. You know, and so we were the team that started that, and we were a little uncomfortable with that, I have to admit, and as a team, but we got started Kansas City, especially Hal McRae, started making fun of look at those guys over there showboating and tipping their hat and this and that. And so
Yeah.
a big series, he hits a home run, and he literally almost just jogs around the bases in such a. It took him like 3 minutes to get around the bases, and then he at home plate he tips his hat like this, just to kind of mock us. And from that moment on, we woke up a sleeping dog. We had a 5-game lead. We actually, the last month of September, I'm pretty sure we played 500 ball.
Yeah.
Kansas City, that we woke up a sleeping dog there, and they ended up going, I want to say, like 24-6 or some crazy thing the last 30 days of the season. And they went by us like we were standing still. We didn't, honestly, we were not the best team. Like in the 1980, Yankees were the best team that year, and we get beat. But we were not the best team. We didn't have enough pitching. Steve Stone, Wilbur Wood. Steve Stone before he became really good. Ken
Yeah.
Kravick. Guys, Wilbur Wood would throw both ends of a doubleheader. We had Ralph Garn left, and every time a ball went to left, everybody would hold their breath. Great hitter and great, lots of speed, but not too good defensively. Richie Ziss didn't have any range in right field, and I was at third base with a bad knee, so I was a step and a dive. Alan Bannister had rotor cuff surgery. He was our shortstop. George Order was second base. He couldn't turn a double play, but he was a great hitter. It was just one of those magical years where he put together a bunch of the Bad News Bears, and they were the big underdog. I think we were like 100-1 when the season started, and to have a 5-game lead in August was quite shocking to the world, I think, and us. So we didn't end up winning it, but that was an exciting year. Many people today, even today, 40-some years later, come up to me and say that was the most exciting year in the 77 Southside Hitman that I ever attended as a kid. I get that. I go to charity golf outings and stuff now, and I get that all the time. Oh, what a great year that was for everybody.
Well, you guys were an exciting team. You hit 192 home runs and had, I don't know, I can't remember what there's a couple other outstanding offensive stats that weren't the norm in the 70s, right? So that was an exciting brand of baseball. As you said, maybe defensively the team was a little challenged. You didn't mention Oscar Gamble, but he wasn't exactly Roberto Clemente out there either.
Yeah.
And one other name I want to mention that I think you played with in 77 and 78, or at least one of those years, was one of my first guests on the show, Greg Pryor, who's a character. I don't know how much you remember of Greg and how much Greg played then, but he's
I'm
he's
still
an
in
interesting
contact
guy.
with Greg. He's a Facebook friend.
Yeah,
Him and his wife Michelle, they're Facebook friends with me. So yeah, I talk to him via Facebook once in a while, but that's about it. But
yeah,
Greg was a good guy, really good
he's a
guy.
very he's a very good guy. I joke with him that I call him my initials for him now are GFP because I said the Yankees should have kept him and not got Bucky Dent, and he could have been Greg effing Pryor, and his whole career would have been different.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure. Yeah.
so you have a couple of really good years in Chicago, and well, let's stick with 77 for a second because you also played for another one of my favorite managers, as it turns out, and big important manager in Yankee lore, in Bob Lemon.
Mm.
What was that like? What was Bob like?
Bob, Bob was uh, fun guy to be around. I think he, and I'm not judging this and anything, but I think he liked to tip the sauce a little bit.
Yeah,
And so you may have already know stories about that, but
yeah,
there was a couple times, to be honest with you, that we had a bat rack in the dugout, a big old bat rack that was like in the front of the dugout that kind of hid you, and there was a bench. There were several times that you could catch him sitting on the bench behind the bat rack, and he'd be asleep or snoring or something, during the game. He would doze off occasionally. I think it might have been because he might have had a little too much to drink or something the night before. I can't verify that for sure. But Bob was one of those guys that was real simple. Look, I'm going to write out the lineup. You guys will play, have fun, and good kind of thing, you know. And it wasn't like he was a statistical, you know, guy like Dick Hauser was. You know, he just one of those easygoing kind of guys that just he appreciated he had a job. You know, quite honestly.
Yeah,
But
yeah, and
yeah, Bob Lemon. I played for some great.
did play for
Got a
some
little
great men.
dose of Billy Martin early in my career. You know, Billy Martin early in my career in spring training, especially. So I got a chance to play with some pretty decent managers for sure. And
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Now
especially Dick Howard. I mean, he was my best. He was my favorite.
Dick Hauser.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Dick was a
yeah,
great guy,
yeah. I
a
see you
great
got
man.
now. You set up. I see. I should. I think I have. I think I have a Yankee shirt in the closet somewhere. I should have put that on this morning. Sorry, I just threw on a
That's
shirt
okay.
as I got out of bed.
Yeah, I didn't have any Twins or White Sox paraphernalia, so I had to wear the Yankee gear. Um, so after 77, at 79, things aren't quite as rosy. Bob Lemon gets fired. Interesting enough, he gets fired and gets hired by the Yankees and wins a World Series with the Yankees in 78. Very
Yeah,
kind of an
and
interesting twist for
which
him.
only proves that I don't care who you are as a manager, you better have the horses, or you're not winning the
Yeah,
race. You know.
a good point. Good point. Um, and you have another decent year in 78, 79. The team continues to go downhill. I think Don Kessinger, if I remember right, was a manager. Then Larry Doby became the second African American manager in baseball. Did you? And then La Russa comes in. I don't know if La Russa came in before you got traded to Texas. Did you play for Tony La Russa or no?
I got traded to I got traded to Texas for Ed Farmer, and we just swapped houses. Somebody gave me Ed's number, and I said, "Look, I'm going to be out of the house. Obviously, where were you staying down?" He said, "Oh, I got a house in Arlington." I said, "Well, you want to just swap? You know, we're trade for each other, not only on the field, but now the houses we traded. You know, so we ended up staying in his house, and he stayed in my house for the time that the season was up. Um, yeah, Ed Farmer, may he rest in peace. He was a character, man. He had a lot of funny stories with him. He was a bright guy, man, really sharp guy. Ended up playing golf with him later on, and yeah, just a lot of fond memories, man. You're bringing up a lot of stuff I haven't thought about in years.
Well, that's what I
But
like to
so I,
do, and bring out some of these great stories that guys have stored up that they don't even know they remember, right? So that 79
yeah.
Ranger team that you got traded to was a lot of talent on that team with Al Oliver, Buddy Bell, John Matlack, Jim Sundberg. Lots of really good players there. And again, I'm trying to think of the year 79. So I think who
Yeah,
the heck were?
I got traded 2 weeks before the disco demolition.
Yeah,
Steve Dahl here, remember that big incident where they
great.
had to forfeit the game? Yeah, so I
Yeah,
got
I do remember that.
traded 2 weeks
Yeah.
prior to that. So I got to watch that on TV. But God, that's a long time ago. Bringing up some memories there, Keith. You're bringing up some stuff.
Well, I hope most of
Yeah.
them are good. What was your time? Your time
Yeah,
in
oh
Texas
yeah.
was very short. Your time in Texas is very short.
Oh
What was
yeah.
it?
It was like
What are your memories there?
well, Buddy Bell's at third. I'm in the same situation I was, in future years with Nettles at third. I was used to playing third base every day, and then all of a sudden, boom, now you're the DH. Which I don't blame people because, quite frankly, I had a bad left knee and I wasn't going to steal a lot of bases, but um, Pearsall was probably right in the sense that he yelling at me. It takes 3 base hits to score him from first base. He said one time. So. Uh, Yeah, you just sometimes have to surrender and say, look, your ego's got to surrender a little bit and say, hey, look, I might not be the dog anymore at third base, but how can I contribute to this team? So I had the same kind of role, played against left-handers, did play third base some there a little bit. Um, And they had a pretty decent year with them. It was only 3 months, but they offered me a contract, a 3-year deal to stay with Texas. But it was so hot down there, Keith. It's just like when I got traded down there, I think it was the first day of 14 straight days in a row over 100 degrees. And
Wow.
my wife just hated it. I mean, we had scorpions and stuff in the backyard of the kids couldn't go out back and play because of all the critters and the snakes and stuff. She just was not happy in Texas, and they offered me a 3-year contract at 600,000. And she said, "No, I'd rather us not take it. That financial security." I thought, "Are you sure?" So I didn't
You're
take
right.
it, and so when I turned down the contract, they then looked to peddle me somewhere, and George Steinbrenner was interested in, a right-handed DH and a backup for Nettles, I guess, and that's how I ended up on the Yankees. They traded me to the Yankees, I think, for three prospects. I don't even know if any of them ever made it to the big leagues, quite frankly. But yeah, my stay in Texas was short, and have good memories down there. Got to play with some good guys. Al Oliver, I remember what a great hitter he was, but
Yeah.
it's just too hot down there, man. I just couldn't handle it.
Well, it worked out fortunate for you. I think you get to the Yankees, as we talked about earlier. I think it's your only playoff experience
Mhm.
um, in your career, Major League Baseball career, anyway. And
Yeah.
we talked about some of the things that went on there. So, you know, as you look back here, is there anything that you would change in your career? You're happy? Again, I've talked with this with a lot of guests, and I believe the same thing. I don't have regrets. Whatever's happened to me in life has brought me to where I am today, and maybe the person I am
No,
today. Is there anything, the injuries, anything that you would change that would have made your
no,
career better?
I don't. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think so. I mean, it was very trying to fall into an open storm sewer and to be out of season, but the benefit came with helping Nautilus get on the map and training me and finding out if I really push myself and I focus, how much better can it be. So there was that, and I think people like underdogs. Bill Veeck loved people that were kind of like the walking wounded, if you will. And he just liked giving people a second chance. And uh, I think America just likes an underdog, and I think I probably represented that to people coming back from knee surgery and the fall in the storm sewer and stuff. People just took a liking to me. I was always good for a quote, and I wrote a poem in '77 with the Southside Hitman that got real popular, and
Yeah,
so
it's,
I was just
I read
liked, and got to stay.
I read that and it was very cool. Yeah.
So you got to kind of stay. You're trying to, you find out in life you're building a family, you're building a community of people. And here in Chicago, that's why we stayed here ever since. Even though I went to a couple other teams, we always came back to Chicago because I was just liked here. And you tend to, I felt like that would help me if I got into the business world, which I did, having people like me. And so it opened up a lot of doors for me here in Chicago. So I started a company after my career called Front Row Tickets, where I help people get tickets to concerts and ball games and stuff like that. And that grew into
Yeah.
a very large business. So my second life was a businessman, really not knowing much about business, but kind of learned as I went. And that became a very successful business. And then ended up using the money from that when things started to get a little bad in the ticket world. When StubHub came on the scene, things started getting a little bad. So then I
Yeah.
took the money that was left and got into wellness. Got into helping people heal and stuff. And so we created a place called Solder World. I figured if
Yeah.
Walt Disney could name his place Disney World, I could name my place Solder World.
There you go. Tell us
So we
tell
help
us more
people now.
about
We help people go.
yeah, tell us more about Solder World
My
and the
daughter,
type of people that you're helping.
my daughter Misty was always kind of a spiritual girl, and she was a massage therapist, and she went out to San Diego to the San Diego School of Healing Arts to do more advanced training and stuff for her talent in massage and healing. And she called me and said, "Dad, I got a side job working for Deepak Chopra." And I said, "Who's Deepak Chopra?" I had no idea who he was. And he's this spiritual guy. He's got this wellness center out here. You and Mom got to come out and check it out. So about a year later, we did. We went out there. It was a beautiful place, and uh, meditation, yoga, all that stuff was being done. And so finally, after working for her for 2 years, she called me and said, "Dad, we need to do what he's doing out in San Diego. We need to do that in the Chicago, Atlanta area. Midwest needs this stuff." And I said, "Well, okay," because StubHub had come on the scene, and I was kind of getting burnt out with the ticket thing, kind of ripping people off, if you will. But excuse me. You want to buy a couple Cub tickets, and I tell you they're 200 a piece. They go, "What?" Well, I had to pay 175 to get them. I mean, it's a hot ticket, and so I was lying through my teeth. I just was uncomfortable with that, and although it was a good service, we helped people get concerts and stuff. I mean, nobody really complained about it, but I started to feel guilty about it. And so when she called and said, "Hey, Dad, we need to do what he's doing in the Midwest," I said, "All right, let's do it." So we got into a strip mall and with 1,000 square feet with no business plan, no nothing. It was kind of a build it and they will come kind of thing. And sure enough, they started coming, and it started to grow. And then there was a space next to us. People out of business, and so we have that, and then ripped out the wall, made a yoga studio, and so and then we had a 5-year lease, and then I think in the third year, those people next to them went out of business, and so we grabbed that spot. So we had 3 spaces in this shopping center, and our 5-year lease, we were going into our 5th year, and the landlord came in and said, "Hey, um, I'll give you another 5-year lease," and I go, "Well, okay. I mean, we're not." This place wasn't made. This place wasn't created for money making situations. It was really genuinely our intention was to help create a place where people could come and work on themselves and heal. And so he said, "All right, I'll give you a 5-year lease, but the bad news is that you have 3 units now, and I've got a heating and air conditioning problem. It's old. It's really old. I've got to replace that. They've raised my taxes. Blah 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 blah. I've got to raise your rent." And so he wanted to raise the rent like $600, 200 a unit. And I said, "Man," I teasingly said, "Man, I could probably build a place and have less of a mortgage to the bank than I'm paying you." And he said, "Well, go ahead." And I go, "Oh no, what am I going to do with Soderworld now? I got, if he's not going to give me another lease," which probably would have if I would have paid any extra money. But it's interesting how the universe works. 3 days later, a lady walks in for her massage, and she says, "I know I'm late, but here's why." And she puts down on the front counter downloaded directions to Soderworld off of MapQuest, and it said with a big circle and an X on the thing, Soderworld is located on Route 83, which we were, and Nielsen Lane, which we weren't. We were on Route 83 and 91st Street, which is about half a mile up the road. Excuse me. She said, "I've been down on this Nielsen Lane, and I'm knocking on people's. There's a cul-de-sac with some houses, and there's a wooded piece of property there. I've been knocking on people's doors asking, 'Is this Soderworld?' And one lady said, 'I think it's in the shopping center up the street.' And so that's why I'm late. The MapQuest led me to the wrong place." I said, "Oh, wow, that's great. All right, we'll call them and we'll get that fixed. But all right, we'll honor your whole hour massage." Well, she leaves, takes the paper with her. I wish I would have grabbed it, but there was a guy sitting in the lobby, Keith. Honest to God, he steps up to the desk and he says, "Hi, Eric. I'm Joe Judge. You don't know me, but I'm from Remax Realtors, and I overheard that conversation, and I happen to know that property that she's talking about on Nielsen Lane is available for sale because my company is the listing agent for that, and I personally have sold that property twice." And both times it fell through because it was a wetland piece of property. and you can't do anything on wetland pieces of property. You wouldn't build anything in the back, but he says in the front part, you got about an acre there. You could build a place,
Yeah.
and maybe someday they'll let you create a little walking path or a Garden of Eden kind of thing out back. And I said, wow, that's a great idea. Here, I just had a fight with my landlord, not a fight, but a serious discussion about another 5-year lease. And so and make a long story short, he got me hooked up with a bank, and we offered the guy half of what he wanted for the property, and he'd already sold it twice, and it fell through. So he was anxious to sell because he wanted to go to Florida and retire. So we bought the land, and then my dad used to build A-frame dollhouses when I was a kid, and I'd see him every time I came home in the garage doing that when he was retired. And so that was the motivation behind the design of the place. So if you go on our website, solderworldwellness.com, you'll see pictures of this A-frame log cabin wooded building that we ended up building right on Route 83, a half mile from where Front Row was. And it has grown and grown and grown, and I just love seeing the 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 healing that's going on at the place. All we do is we try to tell people, look, you're the one that's going to have to heal you. Buddha's not going to do it. Jesus is not going to do it. Nobody else is going to do it. You have to work on yourself and get all that crap and that stuff that you're hanging on to and your attachments that are creating all your suffering. You got to kind of purge. You got to kind of get them on. You do that through meditation and yoga and other different things that we offer. And it has just been the love of my life. I can honestly tell you, Keith, I'm very proud of making the major leagues. Obviously, everybody would love to say that they were able to play in the big leagues, but I'm actually more proud of creating Solder World because of the work that's being done and helping people heal themselves than I was playing nine and a half years in the big leagues. So very proud of Solder World. And if you're in the Chicagoland area, look us up and come see us because it's a great place. You have to check out the website and see the stuff that we do.
Yeah, I definitely like to do that, and it's a great legacy to leave behind. I'll definitely share the information on my Facebook page as well, and there's a lot of other shows that we kind of share information back and forth, so we can get a little bit more eyeballs on your website for you as well. So be happy to do that,
Well,
and it's a great
I
service that you're
appreciate
providing.
that. If you ever get to Chicago, call. You got my number. Call me, and we do professional massage there, and all the therapists are all stars. They're really, really good. I know the owner. I'll get you hooked up with a free professional massage if you come into Chicago. All right, Keith.
Well, I now have a personal relationship with the owner, so I. Well, Eric, listen, I want to thank you for coming on today. I've enjoyed chatting with you about your career and about your second your second act here in life, which is
This is
as you
really
said,
my third act,
fulfilling
actually.
for you.
I've had 3 lifetimes in one, I think. The baseball player, the businessman that turned into a multi-million-dollar business, and then now the healing center that isn't about money, it's about helping people heal. So this is like my third lifetime in one.
Well, it's a wonderful chapter too, and who knows, you may start another chapter yet. You're still a young man.
Oh, please. Uh, Thank you very much. But I'm going to be 73, and I'm starting to. The body says, "Okay, it's time to slow down a little bit." So I officially retired. The Solder World is being run by my son and my daughter, and they're doing a great job. They're running it, and it's nice that I can leave this kind of legacy behind me. As you know, I'm getting near the end now, so it's like it's nice to have you can pass the ball off to your kids, especially that love doing the same thing that you love doing. It's a it's
Well,
a
it's a
it's
great
a
legacy. You've got a couple of great legacies that you will leave behind, hopefully long from now. And I want to thank you for your time today, Eric. It's been awesome. I know you got up early, or at least got yourself together early for me, and I appreciate that. And I know the fans will. And you'll be seeing this on all the Twin sites, the Red Sox. I'm sorry, almost said the Red Sox. I said the Red Sox, the White Sox sites, and some of the Major League Baseball Classic sites. They're going to eat this stuff up. So.
well. I appreciate you having me on, Keith. I really do. Thank you. Brought back a lot of
All right.
memories.
I thank you a lot, Eric, and thank you for the memories. And we'll talk to you again sometime.
All right, buddy. Have a good day.
You have a great day.
Bye to all those Yankee fans.
There'll be a lot of those too. Thanks again, Eric. Bye bye.
2021, a good year.
Bye bye. Have a great one. My guest today, Eric Soderholm, former Twin, White Sox, Rangers, Yankees. I know we had a little delay there with Eric, and his video was a little choppy, but I think the audio came through pretty good. Gosh, I'm on a roll with technical issues, right? But I want to acknowledge some of you guys that were in the room today. I didn't get a chance. Dave Guyette, my dad, Bob Engel. Thanks for stopping, Bob. Mark Robert Shaw, to answer your question about the traded to the Rangers before the disco. Whether was he traded before the disco night? Yes, he mentioned that probably maybe just before you came on. He was traded like 2 weeks before disco demolition night, so he did not see that live in the stadium. But check out Eric's site. I don't know, those of you who are in the Chicago area that will see this, check out Solder World. It looks like a very interesting place, and doing a lot of good work and helping people, both with their physical and mental wellness. You heard Eric talk a lot about the universe, and I'm a big believer in the same thing. Positive energy is the only energy, man. Negative energy is a waste. It takes a lot more to generate negative energy than positive energy. I can tell you from experience. So take a lesson from guys. Some of the things that Eric shared today. He had a really solid baseball career, and he's developed something in his second life that is or third life in his words that's going to be lasting even longer than his baseball career. We'll be on Sunday. Listen, a lot of big news. Frankie David Cruz, I don't know if you're still here. I'm going to put your post up. I didn't put it up earlier because I didn't want to take away from the interview with Eric, but Frankie's claiming DJ LeMahieu re-signed with the Yankees. Not clear. I was trying to check a few things while I was on the site. I think the best I can find is they're very close. He has not signed yet. Just on the New York Post site, but they are getting closer, which is really good news. We'll talk more about that on Sunday at 9 a.m. Again, guys, it's going to be a great weekend. We got a great weekend for football with 2 games Sunday. I'm sorry, 2 games Saturday, 2 games Sunday. The divisional round games. You Bills fans will be excited Saturday night, I'm sure. Wind and snow, and you'll probably be in your element. And Lamar Jackson already seems to be getting psyched out by that. We'll talk about that on Sunday. And I want you all to have a great weekend. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate those of you that will be in the groups that I share this with for watching. And we'll be back next week. My guest will be former New York Met pitcher Ed Lynch. We'll talk about the Mets of his era, which included some great players. He played with Tom Seaver. He played with Doc Gooden, Strawberry. Ed Lynch covered a lot of Met history, and we'll talk with Ed next week live at 8 a.m. Eastern Time right here on TGI Sports Talk. I'll see you 9 a.m. Sunday to cover everything that's important in Major League Baseball. Excuse that scream. Keith Engel, TGI Sports Talk. See you later.